You can never defeat the light of Allah. You can never win against Allah. Allah always wins. The light of Allah always wins. The light of Allah is always there. When everything else disappears, the light of Allah is there. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. You see, Allah is truth. Allah is reality, al-Haq. All that you see in the world happens by the will of Allah. If Allah wants to make someone a businessman, that person is going to be a businessman, and there's nothing in the entire universe that is going to stop that. So if you look at your neighbor or your friend, they will always do what Allah wants them to do, because there's nothing in the universe that happens except by the will of Allah. When you align yourself with the will of Allah, when you align yourself with the light of Allah, nothing can defeat you. Nothing can defeat you. Nothing in the entire universe can defeat you. No matter how dark, how difficult, how painful things may be. In your darkest moments, you align yourself with the light of Allah. Nothing can defeat you. Then you are truly invincible. You see, we have forgotten about Allah. We have forgotten about God. That is why the world is suffering the way it is suffering, because in this world right now, man thinks that he is God. He thinks that his ego, the nafs, is God. But the ego is not God. I don't get to choose how things are going to be in reality. Allah is reality. Allah's will is always manifesting in reality. Donald Trump cannot become a president except by the will of Allah. Allah wanted him to be president for 4 years. That is why he was a president for 4 years. If Allah would have wanted him to be a president for 8 years, he would have been that, but that was not the will of Allah. Yes, Trump thought that he's going to be president the second term, but he didn't, because Allah didn't allow it. Allah wanted Joe Biden there. Why do Allah allow Trump be president for 4 years? Allah knows best. I can speculate. I can have an idea that I believe that this is the will of Allah and this is the plan of Allah. But this is human commentary. It can be true, it can be false, it can be varying degrees of true and false. And this is how we did in the time of the Tabi'in and Tabi'in, in the golden age of Islam. When we humans add a commentary to what we think Allah means by the Quran, we call it tafsir. And when we did esoteric interpretation, because Quran says that there are some verses that are clear and others are allegorical or metaphorical, when we added a metaphorical understanding of what we think Allah means in the Quran, we called it tawil. But right now, man has forgotten about God. That is why the world suffers. Because when you forget about Allah, then your ego becomes your Lord and you worship your ego. And that will always be suffering. Because the ego is not reality. Allah is real. The ego thinks that it knows why things are the way it is. The ego, when it reads the Quran, it thinks that it knows best. It knows what Allah wants. Well, if the ego is what Allah really meant by a verse, then it's not from the ego, it's from Allah. But if it's false, it's from the ego. So by definition, all the truth comes from Allah and all the falsehood comes from the ego. And that's why the Quran says all the good is from Allah and all the bad is from yourself or your ego, the nafs. We suffer because we are in resistance with reality. We want things to be the way we want them to be. But I'm sorry, but I don't get to choose this. I don't get to choose it. I don't get to choose who is going to be successful. I don't get to choose when I'm going to live and when I'm going to die. I don't get to choose my skin color, my culture, which culture I'm born into, which hospital I'm born into. I don't get to choose this. Allah is the one who chose. Allah is the one who made me what I am. Allah is the one that wants everything to happen exactly the way it is in the moment. So the ego is by its very nature a disbeliever. It doesn't believe in God, it believes it is God. It wants to have things the way it wants to be. So how then can the ego create things according to its own will, while Allah's will is reality. How is that possible? One way. Lies. The ego does not decide over reality because Allah wal-Haq, Allah is reality. So the ego lies. It makes up a complex system of thoughts and ideas and theories, and it forces reality to conform to its theories. That's the lie of the ego. And this is hypocritical. That's why the Quran in chapter 2 says that the hypocrites, the munafiq, they are liars. It calls munafiqun liars. They are disbelievers and liars. Why? Because the ego is a liar. The ego wants to attribute things to its own ideas and own theories. The ego thinks it is Lord. And the ego is the ultimate enemy on the path. Because there is only one place for the ego, and that is to surrender to reality, to surrender to Allah. And that is Islam. That is the religion of Allah. That is the religion of God. The ego has no other place in the universe except to surrender to Allah. That it's its only place, because it's not the reality. The theories and thoughts and concepts of the ego are not real. They are real if they correspond with Allah. If they don't, they are not real. Only Allah is real. The light of Allah is all that is real. Allahu nur samawati wal ard. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. All is light. You think that there is something like dense matter, something material? No, there is not. You go deep into what you think is material, you see that they are made of atoms, they are made of protons, neutrons, electrons. You go deeper into quantum physics, you understand quarks. You go even deeper, you understand strings. You understand that everything is light. Everything is light. Allahu nur samawati wal ard. Everything in the universe is light. It vibrates differently quick. Some light we can see, some light we cannot see. We cannot see X-rays, gamma rays. We can't see radio, infrared. All is by the will of Allah. When you are in your darkest moments, turn to Allah. When you are suffering at the most, turn to Allah. Turn to your Lord. Ask Allah for help. Cry out for Allah. If you need to cry, cry. Inshallah, I do that sometimes. Like Sheikh Ahmed Tijani said, in those moments, you turn to Allah like a drowning person is hungering for oxygen. Just like a drowning person is hungering for oxygen, you should be hungering for Allah. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. From Allah we come, to Allah we go. Because all is from the light of Allah. Our spirit or ruh is a small miniature light that comes from the overall ultimate light, which is Allah. Allah's will is always done. Allah is ultimate reality. When we surrender to this reality, we are living in truth. We are living right here, right now. We understand things the way they are. We see things the way they really are, not the way our ego paints things to be. Because the ego is in resistance. Always. The ego is the ultimate kafir. The ego is the ultimate enemy on the path. All the dunya, shaitan and these enemies, they come from the ego. If you don't have ego, there is no seed that enables shaitan to take control over you. There is no seed of dunyaism that can take control of you when you defeat your ego. To know Allah, you have to know your ego. Because your ego is ultimately other than Allah. There is only Allah. I want a new world because this old world is not working. People are suffering. People are dying unjustly. Animals are suffering. Nature is suffering. Global warming, changed climate. Arctic melting. Wars here, wars there. Weapons of mass destruction. I want a new world. But what caused this world to be so wicked and so wrong is because we forgot who is Lord of this world, and Allah is Lord. The self is not Lord. And this is what Friedrich Nietzsche meant when he said that God is dead. When God died in the hearts of men, metaphorically, that is when this world turned to capitalism and materialism and Shatanism. So the only way we can have a new world, I believe, is to have a world of Allah. Because if we have a world of the ego, we have the current world. So the ego needs to surrender to Allah, believe in Allah, worship Allah, trust in Allah, trust in no one but Allah, worship no one but Allah. This is the world I want, inshallah. May Allah bring this to happen. Allah can do anything. Whether we get new world, old world, or something in between, all by the will of Allah. Allah is the only Lord. I am not Lord. I don't know anything. Nobody knows anything. Only Allah knows. When Allah puts knowledge in someone, then that person knows. This is it. Surrendering to Allah is Islam. Surrendering to Allah is the only religion that has ever existed. That is true. Because Allah is true. And when you surrender to Allah, you live on truth. Hopefully this video is helpful. Assalamu alaikum.